Hello folks, today I'm going to start a new project to re-sleeve the left control cable wiring. Right here in my hand is. As a previous owner had wrapped it with black electrical tape. I'm guessing the original black outer sleeving had cracked and deteriorated, got damaged in some form, and they decided just to wrap it with electrical tape, and it isn't routed correctly anyway, and it wasn't done very well. It was done, but it isn't really what it should be. So I'm going to remove this control and have to fish the wiring up from where it ties into the master wiring loom underneath the tank here, put it up on the bench, and take it apart and re-sleeve it, and I'll show that process. Here's an up-close look at the two different looms and two different sets of wires, and where they come out of the control is all split apart. That's the original sleeving right there, and so I'm going to have to take this all apart, take it off obviously, and cut it off and figure out how I'm going to re-sleeve it. And I've done this kind of thing before. It's not particularly difficult. It can be a little time consuming, and then once I have it re-sleeved, then I'll reroute it as close as I can to what I believe the original cable routing was, which is down around the handlebar here, somewhere down in here, loop down through the headstock and back up underneath the tank. Even though I said I wasn't going to show much of the removal of the wiring from the bike itself, I thought I'd just do a quick review of what we're talking about here. Here's the two looms coming from the left grip, and then you pick them up here. They come down into the wiring harness and plug in here. So I'll obviously detach them here and just pull this, loosen this control, take it off, pull this whole thing off. The rest of the wiring is not in very good shape either. This particular part of the loom right here is for the front brake light switch, and you can see that's been, well, someone attempted to tape it up there, and that's in pretty rough shape also. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. In fact, you can see the wires broke. Without repair, replace that. That switch, and then the loom that comes from the headlight and meters right here, that's not in very good shape either. So I'm hoping this isn't going to creep into a complete repair of all of the looms. We'll see, but I'm going to start with these two first. Now here's the control removed from the bike. Probably took 10 minutes maybe to get it off. Came off real easy. And not very long. I'm guessing whoever originally taped this up, based on the way it was done, likely pulled this off the bike, or at least disconnected the connectors from the main loom, main harness, and then they wrapped it. But what I've got to do here is I've got to go in and I'm going to obviously have to take this apart and clean it good inside. If you can get a good look at that. Let's see if we can get that in frame. See what that looks like. Clean that all up. And I'll end up removing all this old loom, combination loom, and black electrical tape. And I'll start way up in here like they originally did from the factory, and re-sleeve it all the way out on both wires. You can see the guy's got a mile of electrical tape here. He actually did a pretty good job taping this up. You can see how much I've got. I've only gone this far, and I've gotten this much tape off it, and I've got to go all the way to the end. So I'll just pick up where he left off and keep unwrapping it. See, there's a section of original sleeving here. Obviously the original sleeve was gone here. He probably removed that when he originally wrapped it a number of years ago. And just keep unwrapping this. And there's the original sleeve again. So of that, probably That's close to 24 inches, I'm going to guess. We'll see here. Yeah, in fact, it's about 26 inches long. This is how much electrical tape he used to, obviously it's double back on itself, and what's left of the original sleeving. Now I'll do the other piece exactly the same. The next one I'll work on before I do anything further is I'm going to clean this main part of this control here and remove the tape on this loom and decide my next approach. I'm going to certainly clean it. If I can avoid taking it apart, I will, just because it gets kind of involved in there. But and start here and work my way out with the loom. And you can see where the factory loom right there ended. So I can literally start with the new loom there and work my way back. Well, I have the control cleaned up, as you can see here, and it works mechanically just fine. The wires are in very good shape. I did a quick perusal of them, and though they're a little sticky in spots from the adhesive from the electrical tape, they're not damaged in any way. So what I'll do is I'll clean the wires, there's 4 of them, with acetone. I'll wear gloves, and I'll use a cloth rag, not paper towel, piece of cloth, and soak it in acetone and wipe down each wire, and that will remove the adhesive and any of the debris and gunk and that kind of thing. Note that when you use acetone, it will take any shine off the wires. It won't remove the color, but it'll take any gloss off, which in this case I don't care because it's hidden anyway and you really don't see it, and it does a great job of cleaning. In terms of cleaning the control itself, I used a long bristled brush and contact cleaner, like you can see here. Make sure that if you use a contact cleaner that it's safe on plastics. Do not, I repeat, do not use brake cleaner here and spray that in here because there are plastic parts, quite a few of them, as well as the insulation on the wiring itself. And brake cleaner will soften it. Depending on how much you use it, it could really soften to the point that it's permanently damaged. So I don't use brake cleaner in here. I use contact cleaner with that's safe on plastics. This is a little pricey, but you can buy it at pretty much any hardware store, home improvement store, Menards, Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of thing. And there's different brands of it, by the way. Once I had hosed it down with the contact cleaner and brushed it out with a long bristle brush, then I used an X-Acto knife to go in there and scrape down any of the points that needed a little more vigor and elbow grease. And I continued to rinse it really well. And then I just used a touch of WD-40. You don't need a lot. Just use a touch of WD-40 in here to lubricate it and drive out any moisture that might be in there. I suspect this has a water component to it. I'm not sure. But anyway, I just touched up a little bit with WD-40 to make sure it's nice and smooth. I don't overdo the WD-40, just a touch in here to lubricate and clean it. And then I used a brass wire brush on the outside to brush it down and clean it up a little bit. And I think it looks pretty good. So the next step will be to clean each of these wires with acetone. To clean it, really all you need to do is I pinch the end going into the control here with my index and thumb to keep pressure off as I pull this rag with acetone across the wire like this. So I pinch it because I don't want to put tension on the connections inside of that control. Basically, this is all I do. You can feel if there's any irregularities in the wiring. I will do a visual as well. It doesn't take very long to complete this. And then you can reverse the process and start at the other end, the connector end. As you do a little wipe down of that as well. Again, I pinch it here between my thumb and forefinger. and do exactly the same thing going in the opposite direction. If I see or feel anything that is suspicious, I'll stop and inspect it. But these wires feel in very good shape. And essentially, that's the process of cleaning the wires. Before I had removed the old sleeving, I had measured from this point here where the wiring exits the body of the control, which is where this originally went to, like that. I measured out approximately the distance, which was 22 inches, where it would end somewhere about where my thumb and index finger are, right there. So that'll be the next step, is measuring out the sleeving and then determining how best to put it on. Here's some sleeving. I have pretty much every size that they make. I get this from Vintage Connections in California, Dell. I've been buying it from them for years. My left hand is a 6mm inside diameter. This is a 7mm. Both are used on Japanese bikes, though I find the 6mm is more commonly used. And in fact, for this project, this is a piece of the original sleeving that came off that I preserved. And when I compare it in size to the 7 or the 6, I believe it is originally 6mm tubing. Again, this is the original, this is the 6mm. I think you can see the size there. If I use the 7mm, see if I can do the same thing here. See, it looks just a little bit bigger. In reality, it probably wouldn't make a lot of difference. And in fact, the 7mm might be actually easier to work with. But as luck would have it, I have more of the 6mm on hand right now than 7mm anyway. This is all, let's see, this is all I've got left of 7 right now. I don't really have enough. And since I think 6 was used to begin with, and I have quite a bit more of the 6mm, this is what I'm going to use to re-sleeve these two control looms. Okay, we got the sleeve cut about 22 inches long, so do something like that. This is where it can get a little bit tricky. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. What I'm going to attempt to do is not cut these ends off if I can avoid it. I might still be there before it's over, but it just saves a little extra work to preserve the original ends. Not guaranteeing that's going to work, but we'll see. What I like to do is I use a little dielectric grease and lubricate each wire before I attempt to feed it through the sleeve, 1 or 2 at a time. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can take 2 at a time and take a piece of stiff wire and wrap around and feed that through and try to pull 2 of them through like that, which I've done that. It's a matter of what approach works best for the particulars of the specific project you're working on. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm going to end up yet, but I think I'm going to start with the simplest method, which is lubricate the wires with dielectric grease so that they're slippery, so that they'll slide through the tube, the sleeve easier, and take 1 or 2 at a time and try to work them through and see if I can get all 4 of them through that way. And again, it might be a combination of different things that I'm going to end up doing before it's over. Let's start by lubricating the wires. Put a little bit on my finger. And do the insulation like that. You don't have to overdo it. Just enough to make them slippery. One at a time. The green one is where I started. There we go. We've got a little dielectric grease on each of the wires. Get that off my hands. And now what I'm going to attempt to do is start with one wire at a time, straighten it out, make sure there's no kinks in it, and get it in there a ways. Then I'll start a second one. Like that. Get that in there a ways. Start a third one. This might not be exactly how I described it originally, but okay. So the gray one is the furthest in, then the orange, rather than the black. I'm going to wait to see where they come out. They're right, one of them's right. Let's see where it's at. Just about through. That would be the gray one. Right there. There's the gray. See if we can get the black one through. There's the black one. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this orange one out first. That's the one that's not in the furthest yet, so that'll make it a little bit easier. Push that through. Okay, the black one's got to be down here somewhere. Yeah, it's right there. Got to be close. There it is. So we got the black one and the gray one through. Pull those back just like that. Now let's see if we can get the orange one through. The green one, the last one, depending on how many wires you got to work with, but usually the last one or last couple are the toughest. It's just the way it works because of the friction inside of the sleeve. The straighter you can keep this, the easier it goes too, by the way. You got to be getting close down here somewhere. Yeah, it's right there. In fact, I can see it. There it is. So there's the orange one. Straighten that out a little bit. Try to make sure there's no kinks inside there. That just makes it more difficult for the very last one. Okay, so we got 3 of the 4. I'm going to put a little extra lubricant on this one, especially around the fitting at the end, connection. This is going to be the tough one. I'll tell you right now. Okay, what I think I'm going to do is it doesn't really want to go any further than that. probably close to 2/3 of the way through. So I'm going to have to take a different tack. And I indicated earlier, you have to try different combinations sometimes to make this work. So what I think I'm going to do is pull one of these out and attach another thin wire without a tip on it, a longer one that I'll pull through with the third wire, leave the end out here, and then hook that on here and see if I can pull it through. I think that'll be my next step. Okay, here's what I've done. I've taken this piece of yellow stranded wire. It's a smaller wire, which is what I wanted. Stripped some of the insulation off the end and wrapped it around. This is the third wire that I pulled back out. And my plan is to send this one through, pulling the yellow wire with it, and then I'll leave that out, sticking out at this end here. Then I'll wrap that around the fourth wire and pull that through. That's the plan. We'll see if it works. This has already been, these two strands have been already lubricated. So now what we got to do is feed them through out the other end. Okay, I've got 3 of the 4 through. One of them I pulled this yellow wire through, connected it to the orange, as you can see there. Actually, what I ended up doing is taking 2 out, sending the orange with the yellow through, and then sending the third one back through. It just was a little easier that way. As you can see here, I have the yellow wire stripped back, and I wrapped it and got it quite securely attached here just beyond the head of the connector, the butt connector. Got the gray wire all lubricated up. Now the intention will be to pull the yellow at this end like that and pull the gray wire through. And again, it will require a little bit of finessing. This doesn't mean it's going to go easy. It just means I got to work it through. Okay, we got it started. Take our time. Kind of straighten that out and see if that helps a little bit. You can see it's right here where my thumb is. Let's see if you get that better in the frame right here. So I'm keeping it nice and straight, just putting easy tension on it. I can get this in frame. Here's the opposite end right there. Bingo, there we go. I think what I'm going to do, take the screw out, see if I can lift this plate, slide the sleeve up underneath this gold anodized plate, or gold plated plate, and then trap it with this, the gold plate. When I took it apart, it was like that. It was just butted up against the control. That might have been original, I'm not sure, but usually what I've seen, or more commonly, is that the sleeve goes in just inside of this cavity to totally protect the wire. So I think I'm going to see if I can do that. Other than that, I did preserve the original connectors. I will do a continuity test before I'm done, just to make sure I didn't break any wires. I'm pretty sure I didn't. Make sure everything's still good, but one of the things I want to do is not put the extra work into cutting these off and redoing them, and I did preserve them. Well, there it is, it's done. You can see I got the sleeve trapped up underneath the plate there. think you can see it. And I think that was probably originally how it was. But anyway, I feel better about it because now the wiring is protected all the way up into the control. I did check the continuity of all the wires in the various positions of the switch, and everything's fine, so everything works as it's supposed to. And now this half of the switch, there's the other half yet to be done, is done. All told, not including the video work, this was probably 45 minute project to get from where I was with this half of the switch to this condition. Some of them go easier than this, some of them go harder. This was probably about average, I would say. So now I'm going to move on and do the same process with this one. Okay, here's the second of the two controls. This is the 3-wire unit that controls the high-low beam on the left side. I use the exact same technique I showed earlier to fish the 3 wires through the sleeve. This is a 6mm diameter sleeve as well. So the 3 wires went through a little easier than the 2, or the 4 rather, on the other control. And lubricate them up with dielectric grease, slip them through one at a time, and 15-20 minutes and it was done. I did clean this up too, by the way. This is a little grungy, so I cleaned this inside. This wasn't as fouled inside as the other one was. Cleaned up a little bit easier, but you can see I extended the sleeve underneath this clamp. That's the way the original one was, and voila, it's done. Next step will be to install it on the bike. One caution, when using acetone, don't use acetone to clean this gloss sleeve unless you want to flatten the finish. This bike came with a high gloss sleeve like you see here. This is an OEM type of sleeving, and you certainly can clean it with acetone, and as long as you don't use an excessive amount, it'll clean fine, but it will flatten the finish, turn it into a very flat black, and you'll do irreparable harm. In other words, you won't be able to get the gloss back. So don't clean the sleeve with acetone, only the wires, unless you want a flat black looking sleeve. For the wires, it really doesn't make any difference because they're hidden anyway. And it will flatten the look of the sleeve, or the wires as well. So again, next step will be to install on the bike.